Welcome to the fourth presentation in our series on action learning. This presentation is about different perspectives on action learning. I'm Carter McNamara of Authenticity Consulting. We're providing this series to make action learning even more available and more accessible to everyone. This presentation is one in a series and they are best viewed in order, so please be sure to visit the website below for more information on the complete series as well as more information about our company. And so now, let's get started. If you've been following along with us in our series, then you understand the larger context in which action learning emerged as such a very powerful process, and you know what the action learning process is, including within the context of an action learning program. We also reviewed how the process can be customized. So now, it's useful to consider some different perspectives on that process. That will help you avoid any confusion in case you read more about action learning and notice that some people use slightly different terms or approaches with action learning. So first, we'll talk about reasons for the continued confusion, and then we'll explain different perspectives that seem to contribute to it. There's also some different definitions, even for the same terms. And we'll close this presentation by mentioning some different schools, I'll call them, of action learning. They are not formal schools, rather they're a different set of beliefs and approaches to the action learning process. Rather than letting this become confusing for you, just keep in mind that the process always uses the same elements that we discussed in the previous presentation. We get an increasing number of calls from potential clients who want action learning programs. Years ago, they usually had no idea of what action learning even was. They often now have their own firm impressions of what action learning is, and they often don't realize that their impression is but one model of action learning. None of these is wrong. Each is in response to the strong importance and the strong adaptability of action learning itself. People are usually referring to the same overall action learning process or framework and its elements. It's the more detailed process and components that they see differently. And that can make a huge difference in how well people understand each other in conversations about action learning. The important thing is to understand that there are different perspectives, definitions, and schools, and to understand that each program should modify the framework to match the purpose of the program and to suit the nature and needs of the participants. Two people can be using the phrase action learning and be talking about two very different concepts and not even know it. So when you're reading or hearing the phrase action learning or talking with someone else about the phrase, which level of action learning is referred to? Is the phrase about broad philosophies, for example, about how people can learn from any type of experience regardless of the process we've talked about? Or is the phrase about various theories, about whether to use Kolb's theory or Revin's theory or Mumford's theory? Or is the phrase about a certain model of action learning? For example, the World Institute of Action Learning's model, or about the MIL's model, or any of the others. Others might even mean the phrase action learning to refer to one particular action learning meeting, or multiple meetings in an overall program. And which configuration of action learning is the phrase referring to? So for example, is it single project or multi-project? Or is it single or mixed organizations in a group? That makes a big difference in the conversation. What type of group activity is the phrase referring to? For example, do members only ask questions of each other? Or can they share advice and materials as well? That too can make a big difference in the conversation. Let's look at some more differences in perspectives. When people use the phrase action learning, are they referring to a certain design of facilitation? For example, do they believe that each group should always have an external facilitator? Or should that person transition herself out of the job? Perhaps when those people refer to action learning, they mean a self-facilitated group? The design of facilitation is very important to clarify when someone is talking about action learning. What is the focus of the facilitation they are talking about? For example, should the facilitator focus on standard duties, such as attending to the agenda and ground rules? Or should the facilitator also put strong focus on helping the group to learn more about action learning and themselves? Do they believe the two roles should be separate? Again, they're probably thinking about the same overall action learning framework and its key elements. It's the more detailed processes and components that they have different perspectives about, and that can really cause confusion in conversations about action learning. Let's look at some more. When they refer to the term facilitation, are they assuming it's always a person who is external to the group? And does external mean external to the organization or is not a member of the group? That is, does not get coached by other members? You can see there's so many differences, and two people can be saying action learning and meaning very different things. Let's look at more. Are they assuming the facilitator is always or sometime internal to the group? That is, he or she gets coached to work on a priority? Or is internal only to the organization but does not get coached by others? And do they see action learning as being very open to using lots of outside experts? Or is it just classic action learning fashion to avoid using any outside experts as much as possible? Again, none of these choices is wrong. It's important, though, to know what does the phrase action learning mean in the article you're reading or in the conversation that you're having. There are even different interpretations of the same terms in action learning. And for example, in an article or a conversation, what does the term coach mean? Is it the role of the learning facilitator or the advisor? Or is it the nature of help between the members? And what does the term project mean? Is it always a problem or can it be an opportunity? What does the term client mean? Is it the person who owns the project? Or is the sponsor the person who's officially responsible? You can overcome this confusion usually by just asking the other person for answers to these questions. And here are even some other terms to try to get clear about. Action learning is used very often in leadership development programs. Well, what do they mean by leadership? Is it leading oneself? Or is it leading other individuals, groups, organizations? What? Or there's programs for management development. Well, what does that mean? Does it include leadership development or is it just focus on planning and organizing, administrating? What? It's very common to use action learning for professional development. And what does that mean? Is it management development, leadership development, executive development, career development? You get my point. When they use these phrases, ask them, what are they talking about? One of the biggest reasons for the differences in perspectives is that sometimes the terms are from different schools of action learning, and they are not formal schools in the sense that they're chartered as specific organizations. Rather, they are major movements or overall perspectives. Action learning was first developed by Reginald Revens in the United Kingdom in the 1930s. His design of the process eventually spread around the United Kingdom and other parts of Europe. Some people refer to this as the European school of action learning. While there might be disagreement among practitioners as to what his design was, many might agree that it includes an equal focus on individuals in the team in meetings, an equal focus on actions and learning. There'd be minimized use of outside experts, if at all, and strong, even maybe exclusive, use of questioning. Certainly ongoing meetings. There'd be a priority, though, on accomplishing self-facilitation. And that's the European school. So let's compare that to what many people think of as the American school. That's more focus on the team than the individual, more learning than taking actions, wide use of outside experts, free use of advice. Maybe it's just a one-shot meeting. Primarily there's external facilitation rather than self-facilitation. Now, not all practitioners in Europe follow the European school, and not all practitioners in America follow the American school. But it's important to know which school might people be talking about. Again, each follows the same general action learning framework, but they emphasize different aspects differently. Let's refine your understanding by very quickly looking at some other schools. For example, the scientific. That has a focus on structured problem solving, a decreasing role of the said advisor. Or the tacit. That assumes learning just naturally happens without much intervention of a learning coach. The experiential school You learn especially from reflection on experience, and there is a role for a learning coach. And then finally, the critical reflection school, and that has strong reflection on assumptions, beliefs, and there is a learning coach. Which school might you follow? Thank you for viewing this presentation. We hope you'll go on to the next one. You might benefit from the following resources to add even more detail to our overviews of action learning. The website Action Learning Central references an extensive amount of free resources, including about the action learning process, each of its key elements, examples of action learning programs, and tools for each aspect of action learning. There's even an action learning glossary with definitions for each of the common terms in action learning. Our company, Authenticity Consulting, also is available to answer your questions or to help you in any other way. Our firm does very successful action learning groups around the world and for a wide variety of outcomes and applications. There's also the free management library at managementhelp.org. You can find resources and tools for almost any activity in the workplace, including for many of the activities in action learning. You can find more about each of these three resources by going to actionlearningcentral.com/gratis and select the presentation entitled General Resources for Action Learning. Thank you.